Hello and welcome to the Purpose Cycle podcast, the podcast that gives you impactful practices to build towards fruition and fulfillment. Here's a taste of what we've got in store for you today.
So the biggest question I ask is, what are we here for? What is life really all about? Life is about achieving happiness, balance, a sense of fulfillment, and a sense of security. Understand what you got coming in, clearly understand what you got going out, and then sit down and really understand, right, how much are you spending on essential stuff and non-essential stuff? And that will get you to the point where you're really confident in knowing your pounds and pence figures in your accounts every day.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Purpose Cycle podcast. My guest today is an expert in personal finance who preaches to teach beginners how to invest in the stock market. In a short space of time, he has amassed over 4,000 Instagram followers and last month had 1.1 million impressions on YouTube with a bi-monthly live Q&A for his ever-growing audience. His podcast, The Conversation of Money, informs users all there is to know finance-wise, and he has personally helped me, without even knowing, on my own personal finance journey. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce this week's guest, Peter Komolafe from The Conversation of Money. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm very, very well, John. Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for inviting me. I know that you follow me on Instagram, and we've spoken a couple of times, but yeah, to invite me onto the show is a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to basically go through what I call the purpose cycle today, and there's many different steps to this purpose cycle. But really quickly, just before we do start, I had, obviously this is a brand new podcast, and I had obviously these butterflies and, you know, recording new content for the first time. How does it feel for you when you are recording a live stream?
I'll tell you what, the first one was really nerve-wracking. Really, really nervous because I was thinking, especially on YouTube as well, I was thinking, is anyone going to turn up, or am I just going to be sat here with nobody here? And I can't remember, we've done, I think 14 or 15 so far this year. And I think on the first one, we must have had like maybe 10 people turn up. And I was so thankful for having those 10. But you always get butterflies because it's uncharted territory. I've never done it before. I was concerned over, especially on YouTube, how I'm going to be perceived, what I have to toe in terms of the lines around the information that I give as well. So it's always going to be nerve-wracking. It's a learning curve.
Yeah, I've been really obviously pleased with some of the content that you're putting out, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on when we get to our creation stage. So first of all, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background? When did you first of all become interested in becoming a financial advisor?
Yeah, so I am Peter and I'm 41. I stumbled into financial services about 15 years ago. I was jobless at the time. I was on GSA, Job Seekers Allowance, because that's what it was called back then. I don't think it's called that right now. But I essentially had to go for this job interview because if I didn't go, they were going to pull my benefits. So I reluctantly went to this interview for a job at the building society called Portman. They got amalgamated into Nationwide many, many years back. And back then it was prestigious to work for a bank. And I honestly just thought, I'm never going to get a job because I was really, really poor with money. My credit report was terrible. I used to bounce checks, and I knew that you had to have a really good, clean credit referencing record in order to work in a bank. Turned up to the interview very, very disinterested. And this is how disinterested I was. I turned up in jeans and a leather jacket. And the lady who interviewed me, Jenny Berry, I don't know what she saw. She saw something in me. She goes, well, actually, my customers are going to love you. Gave me a job, offered it to me. And I thought, well, there's no way that the credit report is going to come back and I'm going to be okay to actually start the job. I don't know what happened, but I started the job, and the rest, as they say, is kind of history. I spent a good number of years in retail banking and corporate banking, moved through the ranks there. And then in 2011, I decided, you know what, I've had enough. I was living in East Sussex at the time. I wanted to move back into London to potentially try and see if I could work in Canary Wharf. It was always one of those aspirations that I had, that if I could, now that I'm here in financial services and working for a bank, if I could ever make it to Canary Wharf, that would be the golden egg almost. So moved to London in 2000, beginning of 2012, no, end of summer 2012, and was living off an overdraft at that point in time. Again, really poor with money, and somehow I managed to land a job in Canary Wharf, and that period of time, 5 years, was great. I started as a telephone boy. I don't have a university degree, so just to be there I was fortunate. I quickly learned that a university degree would have got me into more doors a lot more quickly, and I had one, but I didn't. So the start for this company was hard work, and it really did take an effort to get through the interview rounds, application, determination, and really understanding how you get perceived and how you need to put yourself forward. But through there, I spent 5 years with that company, went from, telephone boy, phoning people on a day-to-day basis, to the exec team in 5 years at a Fortune 100 company. I qualified as a financial advisor back in 2012. No, 2014, sorry. In 2014, I qualified as a financial advisor, left them, went to advise for a bit, and fast forward to today, I basically create financial content to help people.
Really, really fascinating that. And you mentioned about aspiration as well. And that is one of the first steps of what I call the purpose cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And what were the first sort of external triggers? And you mentioned obviously working in Canary Wharf. What was it? The image of working there, the feeling of walking up to the building every single day. What was it that made you want to do that?
It was a primal kind of idea that if you worked in Canary Wharf, then you'd made it. So at the time, whilst I was working in banking anyway, I was still producing music at the time. So I was living down in East Sussex, but my friend who I produced with, he was in London and he lived in Canada Water. So from Canada Water, on his balcony, you could see Canary Wharf. So what would happen is on the weekends when I'm up there producing music and in studios, we'll take breaks and we'll go walking around Canary Wharf and just walking around the mall downstairs and just seeing how like opulent it is. It's just clean, it's spotless, right? You start to think, hang on a second, this is crazy. So I spent, I took a week off and actually went walking around Canary Wharf and all the people in suits, and you just thought, this is the panacea of success. So for me, it was like, if you can work here, you've made it. So you have to find your way here somehow. Didn't know how. I just knew that I was going to find my way there somehow. But it was the idea of, it's Canary Wharf. If you make it there, you can make it pretty much in life.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And I do think there is a lot to literally seeing your goal and visualizing it as well. Even tiny things like I was saying to you before we started recording, we've just bought my partner and I've just bought a house, and seeing it get built, we started going for runs every day. We're not much of a runner myself, but I'd go and see it being built brick by brick every day, and we hadn't yet paid a deposit down on that house. So I knew that I had to go to work the next Monday and grind for that week to make sure that I could put that money down for it. I live in a town called Beverley, which is in East Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
And my partner grew up in here, and where we wanted to get married. And she said ever since she was really small, she would see that Minster every day and think, oh, I know it's probably expensive to get married there. I'd love to get married there. And seeing that every day does accumulate your goals. I mean, that's quite inspiring to see that you went walking around, you got a feel for the place as well. It sort of relates a little bit to, I don't know if you've seen the Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, and he walks around.
Film.
Yeah, same here.
That is my favorite.
Same here. And it's the one that got me sort of into that personal development journey.
Yeah.
You sort of feel like you're going on that with him through various stages, and whichever sort of situation you come from in life, you can sort of in a way think about, I want to live the goal, be part of it, and then ultimately become it as well. So.
Absolutely. I mean, that is my favorite film, and I have a lot of synergies in my own personal story with that film, minus the kid, because I don't have children just yet, but I've been homeless. I don't have any family here in the country, so it's literally just me. And you go through personal trials and personal growth, and you realize, or I did at least realize very, very quickly, that there are so many factors that you can't control, and you have to be in a position where you're willing to leave those behind and relinquish the idea that you can influence those things. What you can do, though, is control the things that are within your control. And I guess hindsight and experience has given me the ability to really focus in on that, like really, really focus in on that. So, for example, I don't have a university degree. So the interview stage, when I got the phone call to say there's a job close to you, I think you'll be well suited for. And the guy said Canary Wharf. I was like, where, which building in Canary Wharf? He goes, the tall one, the pointy one. I went, oh my God, okay, what floor? He goes, the 50th floor, the top floor. And I was like, okay. And one of the things that I did in preparing for the interview round was on the telephone interview, I was in Canary Wharf. I actually went to Canary Wharf, sat in a cafe in Canary Wharf, had a coffee to put myself in that environment to say, I want to be here.
Yeah.
So really try and give myself tunnel vision, as
Yeah.
in, this is your chance to be here. Do not mess this up. And it's simple things like that. Like, I really spent a lot of time there thinking I have to do everything that is within my power to make sure that I put myself forward in the best light possible to give myself the best chance. And that
Wow.
visualization is really, really key. I'm a big fan of and believer in visualization.
Fantastic. And speaking on visualization as well, from my own experiences after watching quite a lot of your videos and content in regards to saving and investing, it was particularly the money box video that you did actually that first got me into it, because it really
Mhm.
explained the whole process. And we decided to get a cork board off and print lots of photographs of what the house that we wanted would look like, what would our
Mhm.
first home look like. And it wasn't a small sort of inner city house that was, you know, a quick deposit and we're in. It was this really lovely dream home on the outskirts of Beverley.
Mhm.
And every single day we put it directly opposite our bed. Every single morning we wake up and it's there, so even
Yes.
subconsciously. And we really did feel like that was just so huge towards manifesting the goals, because even though we didn't take the time and look at it, we lived it every single day. It was
Yeah.
there when we woke up. It was there. So
Yeah.
really inspiring to see as well. Putting yourself in that building, I think, is something that the listeners can take away from this.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of self-realization as well. The sort of realization of, right, what can I control, like you said, and what faults or maybe what areas of development can I work on as well, to making sure that I'm able to move to the next step. Was there anything that any personal sort of challenges or any sort of motivation, anything like that you had to work on yourself in order to get to that next step?
Yeah. I mean, look, you always have to be conscious of your limitations and your disadvantages. And I know that may sound really, really strange, but my first clear disadvantage was that I didn't have a university degree. And I had to be prepared for that. And I knew that was going to be a point of contention, even though I was invited to the interview. Luckily
Right.
for me, the company that I went and ended up working for didn't really care about that university degree. But, you know, the recruiter said to me, make sure you turn up early, don't be late. So, in typical fashion, what do? I turn up 25 minutes early, thinking at least I'm going to be one of the first people there because first impressions really matter. And when you talk about trying to control the controllables, because of the way I'm built and the way that I think, and certainly with my background, again, I've been homeless before, so that for me was a huge opportunity. There was nowhere that I was going to turn up with my shoes not shined or my suit not on point, so that initial impression is one of I wanted to make sure I knocked it out the park. So getting there early, making sure that my suit was on point, making sure that, you know, my lapel pin, just to draw attention, to make sure that people noticed me when I walked into the room. That was really, really important. Small things that maybe other people would think, well, you're going way too far. But for me, that was important because it is about first impressions. And, you know, getting there 25 minutes early, but actually, I'm the last person to walk into the room. And when you walk around the room, there are ex-stockbrokers there, Oxford educated guys there. And you have to then really, because I remember sitting there thinking, when everyone goes around and does all their introductions and talks about their experience, at that point, I'd only worked in corporate banking. I had no investment experience,
Mm.
none whatsoever. And I'm sat there thinking to myself, well, this is going to go great. Like, these guys are way over qualified than I am. So what do I need to do to get through this? And for me, it was all about making sure that I put myself forward, being true to myself, but also showing that I have qualities in leadership. I have qualities in the ability to articulate myself and to actually perform a task to the best of my ability and to articulate why I think a task should be done in this way and listening to other people's opinions as well. It's
Yeah.
very, very difficult, but it was one of those situations where, for me, because I knew that I was probably never going to get another opportunity to be in that environment, to be in that room. That was my one shot. So I over prepared, if you can ever over prepare. And mentally, I was there in the state of, this is my one chance. I can control what people think of me. I can control what I do today. I can control my input. I can control people remembering me and me being memorable out of these 25
Mm.
guys. And that worked.
Amazing. So, like I say, I'd much rather look to employ the person who acknowledges what and owns what flaws or what maybe deficiencies they feel they may have, rather than somebody who is the finished article. Because in reality, no one's ever the finished article, are they?
Yeah.
So, and I think maybe in that world, I'm not too familiar with that world myself, but maybe in that world, with a lot of people, in the nice suits, with the nice cars, might think I've made it before they actually have. So that was interesting to hear. What in terms of I've listened to this on one of your podcasts as well. You're saying about the time that you spent being homeless, the obstacles that you had there. Then, because for a lot of people, they would just think, no, that's it now. I can't. I don't have the environment or the circumstances to propel me to that next level. And there might even be people at home right now who have been made redundant, who have lost their jobs due to COVID, who might fear being in that situation. What would you say to them?
I think so. If I look back to when I was homeless, I was a victim of circumstance almost, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
So I was born here in '79. I was fostered from 3 months to seven years old. Then my parents had a great idea, because they're Nigerian, to be like, "Oh, you got to come home and meet your 3 older brothers." So I was only supposed to be out there for 2 weeks. So I ended up being there for 10 years. But essentially, my dad came home one day and goes, "We booked you a flight. You're going back," and gave me 50 quid. So I got on a plane out of Lagos, landed in Heathrow, and went back to my foster parents' house, not even really knowing whether they were going to be there or not. Luckily, they were still there. I stayed with them for a month, and they were like, "Well, look, you have to try and make your own way." So I managed to get a job at the time. My first job was stacking shelves. And because I didn't really know the system or how things worked, I was 17 at the time. I had really poor money management. I didn't really understand how housing worked or anything like that. I ended up moving in with a group of people that, unbeknownst to me, were a bunch of drug addicts. So victim of circumstance meant that I ended up being homeless. And to be honest, I was lucky because I had a person show kindness to me that helped me get out of that situation. And this is where, you know, oftentimes people look at homeless people and say, "Well, it's your own fault." I mean, it's like, my biggest fear is being homeless, and that's what propels me through life, really, to be honest.
Yeah,
Because the reality is, from a financial point of view, everybody is one paycheck from being homeless if you don't have a strong hold on your financial situation, and that is just a reality. If you lose your job, or you have a really unfortunate event with health, for example, your mortgage should be taken, your rent could be taken, everything could be taken from underneath you if you do not have good control of your finances. That's the biggest fear that drives me. And I think I've been very, very lucky in terms of just getting out of that situation. I had someone show me an act of kindness to help me get out, but it's definitely forged my mindset and my drive to make sure that I never get into that position again.
yeah. And it's the way you said as well about being one paycheck away. I have to hold my hands up here. Until you'd mentioned it on your content, I'd never even thought about an emergency fund, which is, quite shocking, really, that I'd not learned it in school. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm part of the education system myself, and some of the things that you've said with that has really made me think about what I deliver to my students when time allows, really. But
Mhm.
the emergency fund, why is that so crucial?
Well, if you look at it this way, everybody's been in a situation where something happens and you're like, "I've got no money." And in that moment, well, if I'd saved money maybe like 2, 3 months ago, I would have been okay. But we never break that cycle and actually save money. And we get back to that next position where, "Oh my God, I need some cash." And you remember the last time and be like, "Well, I should have saved some money. If I had, then I'd be okay." It's a vicious cycle. It's very, very, very hard to break. And the way I always try to explain this is to say, we don't get taught this in school. And the habits are what get us to those positions. because on the podcast this week, I'm talking about financial minimalism, which is essentially the idea of living below your means, not overextending on your financial expenses. And the trap that we fall into because of society and social media is we are consumerists. So we get a pay rise, we want to upgrade the car, we want to upgrade where we shop, we want to upgrade everything. Whereas we should be taught in school that actually just because you're earning more, it gives you more disposable income to be able to build for the future. But again, we don't get taught this stuff. An emergency fund is absolutely crucial because if the car breaks down, if the boiler breaks down, if you lost your job, COVID has been a really, really good, case study for this. What are you going to do? Where's the money going to come from? Are you going to be using credit cards, which you're going to be paying 40% APR on now? Are you going to be looking at overdrafts, payday loans, personal loans, debt that is going to cost you more money in the long run? An emergency fund is so crucial just for peace of mind, just knowing I've got a couple of thousand there. If anything happens, I'm going to be okay. The mental health impact of that, just that little thing, is huge, absolutely huge.
Oh, it is. And I remember when I ended up getting my permanent contract as a teacher, and the first thing I went to go and get was a brand new set of golf clubs. And I just remember now thinking, what am I doing there? I thought, oh, I've got the summer holidays, I can go and I'll spend it on these nice, extravagant frivolities, really, now looking back on it. And then after sort of looking at the content that you were putting out, and it really did change my mindset towards money, thinking, right, it's time to sort it out now. And this minimalist sort of way of looking at it was definitely something that I adopted. I ended up getting rid of my car. We went down to one car because we worked a mile away from each other. So it was like, why don't we just car share? We have the same career. I ended up, we rent right in the center of town, very, very cheap rent compared to everywhere else. So we didn't need to live in an amazing house because we were just sort of passing by this house, really. You're not going to live here forever. And literally every single month, it felt like we were going paycheck to paycheck, but that's because we'd taken out so much for our savings and it was always there if needs be. And that way of that mindset change, I think, is crucial. And it's almost well, I think you've called it before, a financial epiphany.
Yeah.
Why do you think there is then such a stigma around talking about money until this financial epiphany happens?
Because it's not very British to speak about money. It's very un-British to speak about money. It's impolite. Like, you go to America, they are braggadocious about money. We don't do that here. And whilst it's a British thing, it's a disservice. It's a huge disservice. Is it one of the reasons why we don't talk about this in school and it's not got taught in school? Possibly. But we need to be more open and comfortable with having a conversation of money, which is why I called my channel on YouTube and the podcast Conversation of Money, because I want people to know that this is what we're talking about and it's okay to talk about money. There's nothing wrong with it. There is no stigma. It shouldn't be embarrassing. If anything, it should be empowering to say, actually, you know what? Like you've just shared, I'm buying a house. This is how I've actually done it, because other people take confidence in knowing that, well, if John's done it, I can do it. I can definitely do it as well. And there's power in that. There really, really is.
Suit Up Apparel is a new menswear company who provide customers with a compelling range of products that combine looking amazing with comfort. The team at Suit Up Apparel know how testing the day-to-day grind can be, so they have focused their collections around one simple phrase: look great, perform even better. Suit Up are offering new customers 20% off their first order with the code WELCOME20, but don't worry, the Purpose Cycle podcast listeners can get 10% off future orders by using the code PURPOSE at checkout as well. Go on to suitupapparel.co.uk, that's suitupapparel.co.uk to see the fantastic products on offer, and remember to stay sharp and suit up.
It's crazy, and there just doesn't seem to be an age that this happens as well. It happened to me at 27, 28. Do you think this can be taught and instilled into people, or do you think it has to be purely self-driven? Because I've got a 23-year-old brother who I'm constantly now trying to direct towards your content and say, look, you need to look at money, but I just can't get anywhere. So do you think it's something that can be taught or self-driven?
I think it needs to be taught in school. And I think what the government changed something this year where it's compulsory now as of from September or something like I've heard. But this is the biggest thing. We're going to talk about this. There has to be an intrinsic internal drive for it. So the biggest question I ask is, what are we here for? What is life really all about? Life is about achieving happiness, balance, a sense of fulfillment, and a sense of security. Well, what is the one thing that you go out to earn every single day that plays a huge part in those things? Money. So if you can tie someone to, look, what's your purpose? What do you want to achieve? Well, I want to do this, or this is the kind of stuff I enjoy. I want to go, I want to be able to travel the world 2-3 times a year. Okay, cool. So you're going out, you're earning money. How are you going to use that money to help you do that? Money is a tool. That's all it is. The only role that money has to play in life is to facilitate the things that we want to do. If we look at it from that point of view, the outlook and the mentality shifts are completely revolutionary to where they are right now. And that's what I think needs to be taught in school. It needs to be taught in terms of, kids, what is it that you want to do in the future? What kind of, and it's not just from a professional point of view. What do you want to become? No, what do you want? What do you want out of life? Okay, so what role does money actually play within that? How do you use money to achieve those things? There has to be an intrinsic drive. You can have all of the external factors that you want, but in order for people to really make change and to do something different, they need an internal drive.
Yeah, and of course that changes whether you're in your sort of late teens, 20s, 30s, 40s. They're almost like seasons of your life, aren't they? And does your financial advice or content change depending on somebody's age, or do you think actually it's a holistic thing that needs to be given to everybody?
It depends. I mean, I do coaching essentially because I don't advise clients anymore directly because I think, if you look at the financial advisory sector, there are plenty of financial advisors, and essentially they will target people who are 45 plus who have created some kind of wealth. I'm not interested in that market. They're well catered to. What I'm interested in, and people thought I had rocks in my head when I was talking about this, when I was advising 3-4 years ago, they were saying, you're crazy, you're never going to make any money or doing this. I'm not concerned about the 45-year-olds. My main target is 18 to 44, because I think ultimately, no matter what stage you are in life, so if you're younger, it's all about making sure that you understand what the market's all about and what money management is all about, and using the markets as that tying into your intrinsic value. So kids these days are bright. They are so intelligent. They're thinking the way, I wasn't thinking at age 18. They have access to opportunities that I never had access to. I mean, you got 18-year-old gamers making millions now, 18 years old, making millions, gamers from doing all kinds of things. They're thinking about multiple streams of income. They're going to grow up completely differently to us. So them understanding what money management is and what investing is, that is absolutely crucial. Then tying into the mindset of the key thing for you is you need to start young with regular amounts often. That's it. Simple principle. Get your first job, whatever it is that you do, even if it's £20, invest it. Start to learn what investing is all about. That habit will pay dividends going forward. What I find is when I start coaching people, depending on where you are in life, things change a little bit because priorities then change. So getting on the property ladder is a big thing for people between 25 and say 35 in my coaching clients. So they're working towards, how do I get my first house? What are the things that I need to know? I'm also a qualified mortgage advisor, so I can use some of my expertise there as well. Then for the odd people that I get who are 35 towards their 40s, they're very, very acutely aware of, okay, I've probably got about maybe 20 years left, retirement's on the cards, but I haven't invested anything. What do I do? So it can change. And the important thing is to understand what's important to the person when you're interacting with them one-to-one, because then the outcome and the guidance that I give is different.
Yeah, and I suppose it's financial advice is just a couple of phone calls or whatnot, and then great, I've done this, and then they'll probably want to get on the phone to you again and say, now what? But coaching, I suppose, just teaches the person as a whole that education around money, and is probably long lasting as well, which would give you quite a lot of fulfillment.
Well, so this is the way I explain it. It's like, I use this explanation with financial advice. You're getting into a boat with your fishing gear and getting on a pond, and the financial advisor basically does all the fishing for you. It's outsourced. right? So next time you need a fish, you have to go call the financial advisor to get you on that boat and on the pond to get a fish. With financial coaching, what it's all about is taking you on that pond in that boat and teaching you how to fish. It's giving you the ability to make sound financial decisions and know how investing works, know how to clear debt, know how to manage money in the aid of helping you achieve life goals and financial goals. It's all about empowerment. That's the education piece that we should have got in school, but we do not get. And as adults becomes really, really important because now we're adults and we have to make really clean, clear, concise decisions.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'm going to move on to the inspiration side of it then, because I'm just wondering what internal factors drove you to begin the channel, the podcast, this sort of rebuild then of how you develop the conversation of money.
Yeah. So for me, I've been in the industry for 15 years. Like I said, I didn't get any of this in school. My parents are poor. They couldn't teach me. You can't teach what you don't know. That's the simple fact of it. And coming through the industry, I had an epiphany probably about 8 years ago where I was like, I was in Canary Wharf at the time, earning really, really good money, spending money on just ridiculous stuff, like £1,000 on a pair of trainers. And I remember having a conversation with a colleague of mine who was earning around about the same as me. And it was a Friday afternoon. It's like, what are you doing this weekend? I'm going to my house down in Cornwall. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to your house down in Cornwall? You got a flat up here in London. Yeah, but I've got a house down in Cornwall. I'm like, what? So you got a second home in Cornwall? Yeah, I've got a holiday home. I'd spend summer down there and stuff. And I was like, there's me in £1,000 suit buying stupid stuff, and I had nothing to show for it at that point in time. And then you start thinking, well, why is he thinking differently to me? Why is my train of thought completely different to a guy? And look, if you looked at him, you wouldn't think that he had a home in Cornwall. You wouldn't even think he had a flat in London. He was very, very low key. And I started thinking about, well, why is that? And it's because my mindset was completely wrong. Completely wrong. Don't get it in school. Don't get it at home. There was a paper that was recently published to say that your financial habits as a child are formed at age 7. So if you don't get it at home before you reach the age of 7, you've already formed some really bad financial habits. And if you go through school not getting anything and you progress into adulthood, those habits that you've gained, if they're not good ones, then become exacerbated because you don't really understand how credit works and money management works. And I just thought, this does not make any sense whatsoever. So I picked up a lot of my knowledge because I've worked in the industry and I've worked with credit cards, I've worked with debt, I've worked with people looking for student credit cards and pensions and investments and all this stuff. And I thought to myself, well, there has to be someone out there who's actually providing some financial education from the financial services industry to help people understand how things work. You go and have a look at it. There are no financial advisors on YouTube with podcasts or anything like that, really providing the kind of content that I do. And I thought I've got to change that. And that's why the conversation of money started. It started on Instagram in 2019. And it was just simply just started testing 60-second video to see if people would listen. And then this year I decided to go YouTube and create the podcast as well.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So the mindset change is so crucial. And in addition to that, I've seen quite a lot of affluent families with children who are around my age in my school year, then going to move to small terraced houses as the first house because the parents have taught them, actually, you save your money, you invest it. Don't be afraid to go and live there or there because you are building, you're on the property ladder. So it's so fascinating how you think it would be the other way around, but it's not quite often.
It's the popular saying of, we spend our time buying things to impress people that we don't actually like. It's exactly that. And my upbringing in my family was exactly the same. My earliest memory of money is we don't have any food. We need money to get food. So it was a mindset of scarcity straight away. Yeah. And depending on the circles that you mix with and the environment that you're in, you then can fall victim to this narrative of, well, to have lots of money is an evil thing. If you're earning lots of money, then you must be evil. You're not a good person if you're earning it. And that is a negative mindset to have. And it's simple things like, you look at Jeff Bezos, for example, and people always go up at the fact that he's worth, 100 and something odd billion dollars. Well, he's created a global company. How much is Amazon actually worth? So yes, he's worth $100 and so billion, but he's also made a lot of other people a lot of money, more than what he's worth. So the real question becomes, well, how do you partake in that wealth creation?
Yeah.
Wink, wink, investing and
Yeah.
learning how businesses work, how stocks work, how you can accumulate wealth over a period of time by investing in companies like Amazon and the like that are on the stock market right now. But again, we don't get taught these fundamental ideas whilst we're in school. So therefore, we come up with mindsets of scarcity if we come up in a impoverished household, not really understanding how those things work. And therefore, when we earn good money, it's all about capturing the things that we felt that we missed when we were growing up, which leads us to buy stupid stuff like, £1,000 in trainers like I did, and all
Yeah.
the stuff that really, and the big scale of things, are totally inconsequential.
It's crazy, isn't it? And what I see quite a lot now is a huge finance and credit culture. People want instant gratification. There's this, Insta lifestyle, hashtag,
Yeah.
winning. What would you say to these people who are listening and thinking, I may be falling into this trap of wanting instant gratification?
It's a tough one because I've got the benefit of hindsight to know. Like, you think it matters right now, but it doesn't. It really, really doesn't. And this is one thing that I learned. I learned the fact that, you aspire to certain things because you don't have it. But if you get to the point where you can actually afford to go and buy that thing, you probably don't actually want to buy it actually at all, because it loses its value. It's human nature. We always want what we can't have, or what we think that we can't have. And so
Yeah.
if you're in that situation where you're thinking about, I'm going to get this because, instant gratification, really take a second and just sit back and how much value is that thing going to add to your life? Is it really going to make a huge difference? Does it move you closer towards your goal? And again, what is your goal? I talk about this all the time on the podcast. I'm on YouTube. What is your goal? What are you doing this for? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why do you go to work every day in the morning? What are you here for? Does that thing move you closer to that goal? Because if it doesn't, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not something you should spend money on.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're going to talk about creation now, which is the next step in what I call the purpose cycle. And I just want to know, Pete, what does a normal day look like for you? Now you're at this sort of creation stage of your purpose cycle, and you're building content and you're moving forward with your plans.
So most days, I get up probably it depends on the night before. So I create videos and podcasts basically, and videos can be very time consuming in terms of the research, particularly on YouTube because of the way the algorithm works. Keyword research is huge. Then it's all about filming, and it's about scripting to a certain extent. So I spend most of my days, I get up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to fit a bit of a fitness regime in every 3 times a week now. So during the morning at some point, do a bit of a workout. But then I'm typically in here doing research for videos and in useful content that I think that might be out there, responding to emails. I'm now getting to the point where I have, brands that want to collaborate with me. So there's often business meetings here and there. But the bulk of my time is really focused on, content that I can research, that I can deliver via the podcast and the YouTube channel, really in terms of the creation phase of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. I do take coaching sessions with people as well, for people who want them. But there's a lot of focus on content creation and trying to find ways to explain concepts of money in an easily digestible format.
Okay, fascinating. And it's, to see that everyday consistency over time, I assume is the thing that you're looking for. With the content, it has to be consistent, it has to be regular in order for it to grow, because obviously it may not come straight away, but as you're seeing now with your last month on YouTube, is a pretty impressive month.
Yeah, I mean, so on the YouTube schedule is 2 videos a week, so Tuesday and Friday at 5 p.m. And then the podcast goes out on a Monday at 6 a.m. So within that period of time, the podcast is recorded during the week. Then I spend Monday researching, recording YouTube videos. I schedule for Tuesday. Tuesday is spent doing research and any other business stuff that I have to do in between Thursday when I shoot for the Friday YouTube video. And then Friday, then the weekend is all about then resetting for the following week. I have an accountability circle as well, which I do every Sunday at 7 p.m., which is a tool which it's worked really, really well for me this year. Just in terms of, being able to have a circle of people and one person in particular to bounce ideas off and keep me accountable to the things that I know that I need to do. That's been invaluable.
Wow, that's a fascinating idea. Something I might look to take up myself, to be honest. Do you have any non-negotiable habits then that you have to sort of stick by and live by each day?
I'm pretty fluid in terms of my day to day. One thing that I definitely do though, which is kind of like a habit, one of the first things I do is I always check my finances on a day to day basis, just a glimpse of my bank account, just to see what's going in, what's going out, that kind of stuff. I do that. That's almost force of habit. But I because of what I do and because I've been in the industry for such a long time, it's something that I just do on autopilot. But that's one thing that I do almost every single morning. Just to get a sense of where I am and so on and so forth. And I check on my investments on a regular basis as well.
Amazing. Right. So picture fruition for you. What does this already look like if you're reaping some of the rewards already from the hard work that you'd put in earlier on in the years? Or 10 years time, for example, what does it look like to you? Do you have any plans to level up and begin a future purpose cycle?
Yeah. The goal that I have for this is huge. I mean, look, if I could fast forward 10 years, I would have Conversation of Money as a known platform, which will basically be the hub for all of your financial needs. So whether you wanted to buy your first home and you just wanted to know where to begin, what your steps are, it would all be available in one place, in videos, in easy to digestible steps that would monitor you, nudge you to the next goal, know when you've hit that goal, nudge you to the next one, and put you in contact with all of the services and providers that you essentially need. And that's across everything: investing, paying off debt, money management, planning for retirement, everything. That would be it 10 years time, and it would be nationally known. I'm not really too fussed about kind of like personal fame or anything like that. I just want to help people at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. And hearing you say that, you found the content useful, for me, I feel like I've won already, because my biggest goal is to help people. And yes, I have to be able to keep the lights on during the day, and there's a business element to it. But I'm certainly a believer of doing good work, and the financial rewards come off the back of that. But I want this to be a legacy. I want this to be my legacy. I want, for the years after I'm gone, people to look at Conversation of Money or some guise of it and realize, well, Pete did that. Pete changed the way people interact with financial services and financial products, and hopefully build more confidence in financial services and financial products as well.
Fantastic. Okay, just a couple of quick fire questions then, sort of before we wrap up the podcast. Do you have 3 tips for becoming more money confident?
Yes. So, right. First and foremost, one of the first things you have to do, it sounds very, very simple, and it is very, very simple, but you absolutely have to know how much you're earning. First and foremost, how much you're earning. And when I say how much you're earning, not your annual figure, your monthly figure. Because that's one thing we don't pay attention to. We take a lot of pride in, I earn £65,000 per year. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Take home pay every single month. That's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know is how much are you spending of that monthly take home pay? Because if you're spending 80% of it, okay, well, maybe there's a little bit of an examination as to why. Does it have to be 80%? Could it be 50%? Could it be 60%? Could it be 70%? But you need to understand what you're actually paying. And the third one is, sitting down with those 2 numbers and being really, really brutally honest. So we're approaching the new year at the moment. And one of the exercises that I'm going to be doing on the podcast and certainly on an online event is, teaching people how to actually have a look at their finances for the year, for the coming year. I do this every single year. I sit down with 12 months of my bank statements. I go through everything that has gone out of my account, all of my direct debits, all of my subscriptions, everything. I separate them into what is necessary, what is not necessary, and the things that are not necessary, I have a really good hard look at. Do I want to keep it? Do I really need it? If I don't need it, it's gone. If it's something that I think I do want to keep it, then I'll keep it. And this is the key thing. It's all about balance. I don't believe in being frugal to the point that you can't actually just go and have your coffee. absolutely have your coffee, but make an allowance for it within your plan. So absolutely need to sit down and do those two things. It's all about retaining as much of what you earn as possible. So those will be the key things for me. Understand what you got coming in, clearly understand what you got going out, and then sit down and really understand, right, how much are you spending on essential stuff and non-essential stuff? And that will get you to the point where you're really confident in knowing your pounds and pence figures in your accounts every day.
Okay, that's fascinating, and definitely something as well that I've taken from the content that you've produced before. I can hold my hands up now and say I have no idea how much I earn yearly. It's all monthly. It's all planned out. So without sort of going into sort of a similar question, I want to know how listeners can make 2021 their year.
Biggest thing is understand what you want to achieve through 2021. Like, there's no point, nobody gets into a car and goes, right, I want to go here without understanding where they're actually going, right? Unless you really just want to just go for a drive. But if you are going somewhere, you have a destination in mind. So what do you want to achieve? Bearing in mind, we've learned a lot this year. We've learned a lot that, you know, the rug can be pulled out from underneath us just at a moment's notice. Jobs gone, like incomes being reduced left, right, and center. So with that being said, in 21, how do you want your year to be different? How are you going to structure yourself differently to know that, you know, this is going to happen again? It might not be COVID, but it will happen again. There will be another cycle where people lose jobs. The country goes into recession. Are you going to be in a better place? So what do you want to achieve through 2021? What have you learned this year that you want to change? That's a very, very easy point to start in terms of setting a goal for 21, but have a really clear goal.
Okay, amazing. And finally then, how can listeners find you?
Yeah, so the podcast is called the Conversation on Money Podcast. That's on Spotify, Google. It's on Stitcher. It's on Amazon as well now. All of the good outlets. The YouTube channel is called The Conversation of Money. So find me on YouTube there. I've got the website as well. I do have on the YouTube my membership group, which is basically people who want to learn how to invest into the market, so on and so forth. They have access to me to ask questions, explain concepts, investment theories, so on and so forth. So that's a useful tool. I'm on Instagram as well on Conversation of Money. So you can find me on all of the social media outlets there.
Well, I'm going to speak for myself here, Pete, when I say that was absolutely fascinating. It was almost like I was listening to one of your podcasts all over again, and I got a lot from that. So I really do hope that the listeners of the Purpose Cycle podcast also got that value. Thank you very much, Peter. I do really appreciate you being on the podcast, and I wish you well for the future as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Wow, well, that was such a fascinating insight into how you can make finances work for you and being money confident as well, which is one of the big takeaways I got from that episode. Thank you to Peter. I thought that was a fascinating insight. And please check out his YouTube channel and podcast, appropriately named The Conversation of Money. Join us next episode when we are joined by online fitness guru Josh B, who's going to talk to us about how a healthy lifestyle will help us ultimately achieve our goals. See you next time.